2 and 1.
What? Well, no. What is going on with you today? And just hitting the record button.
Okay, honestly,
randomly. Just randomly, like record. No, we're not recording. Record. I'm Jade.
I'm Winona. Oh, good job.
High five. Right? Somebody has to be professional to be like record, unrecord.
I actually got dressed today. Like
you got dressed today, but you put out the proof of our book. So that you got dressed today, we'll put out the proof copy of the book.
Well, only one thing can be dressed for the brand at a time. Like either I'm dressed or the book is dressed. Pick one.
It's true.
All right.
I'll give you that.
I'm back. Yes. We're doing the Ladies' Tale
Welcome
podcast.
to the Ladies' Tale podcast. And we promise to maybe be more professional.
Today. Just today. It's a one-time thing. Today we are doing the Future Creative Panel, Creative Futures Panel. Okay. And quick thing, we wrote
like books, right? We literally like guys with pop poetry, and I thought the books was bad with other life lessons. And I thought being grown up was easy. Only You and Me, Memoir and Breast, the Widow's Debt series, and Pouring Coffee, all available where you get your audiobooks. And you can find out everything your ladies are doing, and I do mean everything. Probably some things you probably didn't want to know on www.andithoughladies.com. Wow. And we have a wonderful co-host today. Co-host?
No, she's on panel today. She's not co-host.
Oh,
go ahead and co-host.
Why?
Today, Tanya. Go
Why?
For it.
You didn't tell me. And now I look crazy. So there we are. Anyway, she's on panel today. But y'all aren't here to hear about us. You're here to hear from our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests would like to introduce yourself. We're going to start with Tanya because I totally thought she was coming.
Well, I'm glad to hear that I am on the panel because I did not prepare questions. My name is Tonya Todd. I am an author and actress from Las Vegas.
Okay. And then next will be
anyone else?
Oh yeah, we could do that.
Anyone else
who wants to go next on their introduction? Speak up now or forever hold your peace. I don't know why that came.
Why? What is happening?
I'm passing the mic to Kevin.
There you go.
There we go. Kevin E. West, veteran television actor, 3-time author, corporate speaker, all-around smartass, and from originally Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, well, then Kevin has to pass it to someone else because I'm not.
I'll pass it to Craig. We're gonna say the end for Alex.
My name is Craig. I'm the founder and managing talent manager of CK Talent Management. We manage talent.
I love it. So, Alex, last but not least.
Yeah, I like Craig's lead on that. Yeah, I'm the founder of a talent management company called The Green Room. Been around now 9 years or so. Did my standard mailroom and all the acronym talent agencies, over the last several years prior to that. And yeah, now I help people get famous for a living, and then I take 10%. And so long as people still like my face, I'll keep doing it.
I love how you explain managing. Every time you do that, I'll be like, if only I had something to offer to a manager, I'd be like, I'd sign with Alex. That's not true. I've already signed with someone.
We'd be like, here, take this 10% of 10 cents. Here's your penny. That's for you. Okay, but see, and on this creative panel, we're going to talk about how to make more than a penny this year. That's
exactly. So let's start off with what everyone wants to know. Let's go with managers first. What should be the goals of creatives to get represented this year? What do they need to have?
Well, it's funny because I think a lot of times those are pretty broad. They're broader questions than they sound when you initially ask them. Generally speaking, I tend to try and have succinct answers that can apply to pretty much anyone I would sit down with. I usually tell people that their main focus should be to stay as happy and healthy as possible for as long as possible, so that what they're doing, so that they'll be around long enough to be noticed. Because a lot of times there is a big luck aspect to what they're doing. So a lot of times you get, and I'm sure the other panelists could speak to this, but there tend to be sort of the canned answers or the get new headshots, take this class, do this, do that. And the reality is that answer, I think, sometimes has to be tailored to the individual person in person. So generally speaking, staying as happy and healthy as possible, as long as possible, is the best thing that any creative can do to be prepared. A lot of times people have arrived specifically after the last couple of years. I think people should check in with themselves and make sure that they haven't arrived at a certain level of apathy that they may not even realize themselves. We've chosen to do creative business with very low odds of success, which means that idealism and perseverance are extremely important. So making sure you still have those things, I think it would be step one in my book.
Right.
No, I agree with that, what Alex said. I mean, the canned answers are always like, oh, get headshots, bring me your reel, and I think it can't be canned, and I totally agree with Alex on the fact it has to be individualized based on the talent that comes before us for interviews, and the creatives that come before us, because each talent is different. I'd say it's like snowflakes in a storm. At a blizzard, all the snowflakes look the same, but up close they're different. So each talent and each creative is different, So, you don't say a painter is just a painter. You got to look at Picasso and Matisse and all that, see them up close and different. Because I might not want to represent Matisse, but want to represent Picasso. It just depends on that. So I agree with Alex on his comment.
Oh, that's amazing.
This is very professional.
I know. I felt
I feel
Kevin,
up.
I know. I do. I was. I hope I drank my milk this morning, my almond milk, because I feel like I'm growing.
Well, not to mention, per what Alex and Craig both have said, since I'm certainly the old guy here who has been doing this for a long time, considering my first guest star was on Matlock. Just let that sink in for a second. Thank you, Craig, for the smile. I appreciate that.
No, I love Matlock. I've watched Matlock.
I heard about
love
it on
that.
The Simpsons.
Yeah, thank you. I like that's touche.
Oh,
Well
dear
said.
God.
Well said, Tanya. I was gonna say before Tanya was born, but I decided to stay away from that, and then she did it anyway. But I, not only with regard to the Matisse conversation, I think that one of those canned answers are certainly correct, and they're not what you need to hear, because I've had a ton of representatives in my long career. But the other reality is sometimes you already have a Matisse. So as much as you may want to sign a Matisse, that's why I've equated in all the business education speaking I've done over the years as the founder of the Actors Network that, a no today is not a no in perpetuity. Unfortunately, my community often takes it that way, and it's unintelligent. So one of the things I would say to creatives is you have to have an interest in being creative far beyond just the idea of being wealthy or famous. And if those are your two main drives, that's great. I would then recommend that you put a time limit on how long you're going to commit, per Alex's Be Happy, in your life to pursue it. And if you don't reach that benchmark by a certain time, get out. I would say that to my community loud and clear all the time. There are far too many unhappy, and creative is a broad word. We have authors here. There's all forms of creativity. But if you're talking about, with two managers here, performance creative, there are far too many unhappy people with a headshot in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and every market in between. So I would certainly recommend that you engage yourself with yourself about why it is you want to be a creative, and focus on that along with being happy outside of the tools and tasks and the benchmarks and the to-dos that you have to be, even to just be a person engaged in the profession, because it's going to take a lot more resilience than that to hang in there through this profession.
Speaking, actually piggybacking on that, Kevin makes several good points, but piggybacking on that, it's also important to note some of the more logistical skill sets that a lot of creatives of all backgrounds, in fact, young people across, old people too, actually, but young people across the board, nobody talks about their financial health ever. They talk about their financial health when there's money to be made off of talking about their financial health. But in the beginning of one's career, a lot of times nobody is told how to save money, why it's important to save money. More importantly, the difference between money going out and money coming in, return on investment. And I'm not talking about return on investment as far as, trying to beat the S&P 500. I'm talking about return on investment on whether it's worth it to spend that $500 a month on this acting class versus spending that $300 that month going to several plays at downtown LA. These are decisions that people have to make. And partially, I think people are, especially in the creative world, there is sort of a badge of honor that they seem to apply to themselves for having victimhood. And they think part of that is having no money all the time and always being scared because they get used to that lifestyle. You don't have to live that way while you're pursuing your creative career. You just don't have to. And that's part and parcel to you being happy and healthy, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, but also financially. It's all part of the same beast. And I think that's a conversation that's just not had ever, at least that I've seen. Maybe 2% of the time. I tell my clients all the time, I said, listen, I will get you on a series at some point or another, but you need to be around long enough for me to be able to do that. And when you do, there will be a boatload of acronyms that come and want to sign you after that. What you need to do is you need to focus on something very simple. When you book that kind of money, it'll be the most money you've made in your life. You're going to immediately be part of the 1% overnight. So start to square with that idea. Take 10% of what you make, go and buy something stupid or go on a trip and put the rest in a 401k or invest it, because you don't know when this is going to happen again. And it's a conversation that just never, ever happens. It's very, very important. So I think as far as preparing for that creative future, especially in these days where people are getting used to getting checks in the mail from government entities that they never even heard of, it will stop eventually, and you're going to be left feeling very cold and very desperate if you're not willing to create and look after your own wealth management as well, your own financial. Because I remember being very poor when I started my company. If I wasn't very judicious for the first few years, I wouldn't have been around long enough to be able to be on this Zoom call with you fine folks. So these are important conversations to have with creatives, and an important conversation to have with yourself as you're pursuing a creative career. It will elongate the amount of time that you are here to pursue your creative path, and then it will, by definition, give you more opportunities because you're around longer. So I wanted to point that out. In my opinion, I think it's something that needs to be brought up more often.
Alex, I want to say, first of all, I feel like you just read my mind, because literally that was going to be my next question. So now, thank you. I don't have another one.
I did see
Zoom call over.
I did definitely see Kevin's hand go. Oh, you dropped the mic. Oh, okay.
He dropped the mic.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that was a drop of the mic moment. All right.
Tanya, you've said nothing.
Alex?
Let's check in with you before we move on.
To Craig.
That's okay. I do, just to add to what they've been saying, if you have not had an opportunity to sign with a Craig or an Alex, this is a great time to learn what it is you want to do. So in addition to practicing the craft that you think is your interest, try new things. What if you start doing something and you realize you hate it? What if you try something and it transforms into something more? Now is the time to practice and get good at what you like and figure out which way you want to go. Because if you're thrown into the mix, you're going to have a whole lot of eyes on you while you're failing. Now is the time to fail.
Wow. All right, Craig.
There's the bumper sticker for you. Now is the time to fail.
Time to fail. I like that.
Baby on board.
I agree with Alex and what he said. There's the financial side, as well as investing in yourself as a creative. You might not be doing it the right way. I hate to tell you how many of my actors go to actor class after actor class after actor class. And I finally turn to some of the actors and I say, what about going to an accent coach? That would vary your plethora of versatility, of learning recessive pronunciation for a UK role or a Southern accent or what have you, learning some kind of something that's going to expand your repertoire than just going to acting class after acting class and throwing money. Well, everyone else does it.
Or learn another language.
Or learn another language, or invest in some Rosetta Stone or whatever it is. And that will create a wider portfolio for you. So me as a manager and an agent can market you better and help yourself appeal to a wide range of different roles and different opportunities. It's interesting because I had a talk with my division director for my sports division this morning. It's right on this topic, where we were talking because I was saying, I've got all these branding deals coming in for your college athletes and stuff. And he's like, oh, no, I want you to throttle those back. He'll get mad at me now for saying this. And I said, what, you want me to throttle those back? He goes, yeah, because I have to talk to these kids first to get their expectations in line. Because if you start throwing billion-dollar company and Nike deals at them, and these kids don't have a frame of thought of money and understanding and whatever, their egos are just going to get inflated. And just they have to learn at the beginning, and I have to work with them in order to get that. So I have to throttle the back to my branding division's deals that they were working on for these athletes, these creatives, I guess we call athletes creatives. And so they had he asked me to throttle that back because he had to get their mind around that, getting a big check. And I have talent that this has happened to recently. They get a big check in the mail and they think they know everything in the world. They think that, they can do better than you, or they don't need to listen to you, or they don't whatever. But as soon as that season's over for the athletes, they're going to come running to you and asking you, where's my contract for the next season?
Also a beautiful thing to watch someone viscerally come to understand tax brackets right in front of their eyes.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Because
yeah, I love
what
that.
what they tax you when you make $24,000 a year is not what they tax you when you make $240,000 a year.
Yeah, it's you know, it's interesting. It's like I have a talent right now, and he's getting taxed because he's also getting California tax too, because he's from a foreign state. So he gets the California tax, he gets the income tax, he gets all the Social Security stuff they get out of his check, and then I get my commission. And by the time it wheels it down, it's like, you know, where did my $7,000 check go to? You know?
Commission on the gross. Commission on the
Yeah,
gross.
yeah, commission on the gross is what we get. And then he
Yep.
sits there and goes, where's all my, now I'm only getting $2,000, you know, my $7,000 money. But he said for the healthcare, for all the other stuff that's out there that you have to pay on, it's all deducted in there. But they don't realize it. They think they get that check, and then they're going to hit with the income tax stuff. I just had to stop recently a talent. My legal department had to actually stop a talent, one of our recording artists, from doing NFTs. They want to do these NFT things. My recording artists put a song out there and sell it as an NFT. My legal department came running in, and one of my in-house legal counsels is a transactional attorney that's worked for Securities Exchange Commission and stuff. And she said, the SEC doesn't know how they're going to tax these for transactions yet. You might be getting a big transaction bill from the SEC, and you might get a big tax bill from the IRS for NFTs. And we had to stop the client from doing them because they might ended up liability-wise, they might ended up with a big tax bill down the road, and they couldn't see that.
I recently went to the doctor. I thought I had NFTs, but I'm good. Clear.
Or NTFs or whatever they're called. I don't know.
You Alex. So, question, y'all. How did this become a business call?
I know, right? Right
Every
there.
time the ladies get involved.
Honestly, ladies, that's what's important. I mean, there's umpteen million conversations like this happening all over the entertainment. We've been doing this kind of stuff for decades and decades, and Zoom is nothing more than a digital version of people being asked their opinions because they love to have their opinions asked for. If these actors are serious about having a comfortable life, it's not rocket science how it's done. It's just nobody tells you how to do it, and they certainly don't tell you how to do it for free. If they're going to tell you how to do it, there's the entire economy of Hollywood is not built on the people at the top 2%. It's built on funneling information to people who don't know anything and keeping them coming back like a drug addict for information. And again, it's one of those things like, I'm very clear with my actors. I said, listen, don't let anyone make you feel bad for making money. Okay. Like, and people do that. They're not in a egregious way. It's not like they're going to go beat you up or something like that because you booked a series, but immediately, if someone in an acting class goes and books a series, here comes the passive aggressive shit that started, oh, that's amazing. I mean, it's great that you were able to do that. You know, like, it's jealousy. Okay. The fact of the matter is these folks all signed up to do a job that's not supposed to be easy, just like a sports star. You know, it's like, if you want to play in the Super Bowl, don't think you're good enough to play in the Super Bowl because you waited outside the stadium for 10 years, you know, make it happen. And a lot of time these performers are the same way. It's like, listen, if you don't remember that feeling of how worried you were that you would never succeed at this business, well, guess what? You just succeeded. So don't be stupid. Now that you've booked Grey's Anatomy or whatever it might be, don't be stupid and burn it all away on stuff that you don't need. An FHA loan is 3.5%. Buy yourself a first-time property and start paying a mortgage instead of rent and start thinking like an adult. You know, nobody is told this stuff, and they end up like lottery winners. They're like, where's the next thing? Like Craig was saying, where's the next thing? Where's the next thing? Because they immediately go back to being a victim. It's like, you're not a victim. You're a victim if you allow yourself to be. If you're one of the lucky ones who books a series or books something that's notable, thank your agent, thank your manager, pay your taxes, and put the rest of it away, because you don't have to live the worried life for the rest of your life. I've known too many actors like that, and people coddle them and they coddle them and they coddle them. It's like, look, grow up. You may not like hearing this, but I'm telling you, I'm saving your future by telling you this if you follow through on this. I remember I had a client recently, booked a series, booked him on 2 series at the same time. Had to fall on my sword in order to do this. And this person said, you know, we want to rent a house, you know, him and his, you know, partner. I said, great, what's your budget? They said $7,500 a month. And I was like, why? You know, like $7,500 a month. If you were mortgaging that, you could find a nice beach condo for that. I said, why would you do that? It's like, oh, nobody ever said that. And it's like, yeah, nobody ever said that, because that money will get funneled away from stupid people eventually into the hands of smart, patient people if you allow it to happen.
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, ladies. I mean, I didn't know Craig and Alex and
that was a
Tanya.
dark time.
No, I know. It was a dark time.
That's Kevin's job to be the smart aleck today.
Oh, no. Alex and I do a road show. But when I founded the Actors Network in 1991, pre-digital, pre-cell phones, analog world, and bearing in mind, just for Alex and Craig and Tanya's edification, that it was not a workshop place, because we were the anti-workshop place, but it won awards because of what we did with the information. And I would even argue today, because Alex is 1,000% right, and I know Craig understands and Tanya understands that, but I would argue today that our community is even less aware of everything that you just said. And part of that is because of the disbursement of information based on digital technology, but it's still the same thing that goes all the way back to 3 decades ago, which is the fact that we do not have any form of educational system in this country as it relates to making money as a creative artist, especially a performer, that actually exudes the value of what Alex just said. And that's part of the problem. So you don't have it from parents. Now I became an actor later in life, but you don't have parents espousing this. They don't know their butt from a hole in the ground with regards to this. They don't seem to want to apply what they already know to this profession when their child or themselves chooses to get into it, which is weird because this is a multinational, multi-geographical, multi-billion-dollar industry and a business where people make money just like any other industry is. And so the fact that you choose to somehow think, oh, I mean, I know so many people who had successful businesses and moved to Los Angeles, and all of a sudden they decided they want to miss that chance to finally be an actor. And they literally seem to forget everything they'd learned about being a business person and an adult, as Alex said, just because they got a headshot done. And I would look at them and go, have you lost your collective mind? And so part of the problem is the educational system only wants to focus on the artistic side, which is great. They don't want to talk about the realities of monetization and the realities of having to manage that. And so therefore, yeah, there's no infrastructure at USC and at ACT and at all the Ivy League schools about the other side of this profession. And so you wind up with the same canned answers and the same stuff that you get from everybody just about this and a demo reel and a thing. And there's no real infrastructure in the orientation of what it is to be a pursuing professional performer to make a living in a career.
They set you up to crash and burn.
Yeah,
they do. And Kevin and Tanya, I want to jump in and say, because you guys are creatives, I want to jump in and say, when did it become a competition with actors? I mean, this competitiveness with these actors, and I know it dates way back probably to Shakespeare and all that, but it's this competition. I have an actor and he's like, well, I want to leave the agency. Will you release me? And I released him. And then one of his friends said, oh, I heard there's an opening on your roster. And messages me saying he wants an opening on my roster.
I can only tell.
And he got his friend to drop out of the agency for his. And I was like, no, you're not coming in the agency. I turned the friend away. But there's this competition between actors and saying, I think Alex touched a little bit about it, like, oh, you got that role. And then they come back and they say, I have a client that's at NYU Tisch. I'm not going to say her name, but she's at NYU Tisch. Her friends say, oh, they're going out for 30 auditions a week. I said, how long does it take you to do my audition being an acting student? She goes, well, it takes me about 4 or 5 days to read off the book and do the self-tape. And I said, well, if I gave you 2, she goes, yeah, then I'd be buried. I won't be able to do my schoolwork. I said, okay, so your friends are in the same boat as you, and they're doing 30 auditions a month or 20 auditions a month. And if they're not being waiter number 1 or waiter number 2 in the thing, then obviously if they're doing any substantive roles, they're not turning out 30 auditions a month. And I said, first of all, out of your collective class at NYU Tisch that you're in, have any of the actors that you're talking about who signed with these other agencies, because she said there were other agencies, I said, have any of them done any movies? Have any of them been a lead in a movie? Have any of them been a lead in an independent film yet? She goes, no. I said, have you been a lead in a film? Have you been in an independent movie? Is your name up on a poster and likeness on a poster? And she goes, yeah. I said, then what the F are you listening to the rest of them for?
All I can say, Craig, is I wrote 10 Commandments for the Actors Network in 1993. And number 10 said the following: if you don't book the job, it may as well be someone you know and like. You can walk 15 people of the same ethnicity with a similar hairstyle into a room with the same 5 pages, and not one person is going to read it the same. And I was a competitive collegiate athlete. So the fact that I've never transferred that kind of competition to the arts, because we are unique. You have to learn what your skill set is and how to use it the best you can. Go in and do the best job. And my philosophy since day one has always been, make it really hard on them to not hire you. And that's your only job. And so the idea that someone is going to try and torch, firebomb, and to your point, yes, be jealous. Again, this is all, it's to the point of what Alex said. It's you don't have the proper mentor from the time you start. You don't have it from the educational system, and many representatives you don't get it from, in terms of how to think about how you're in this profession. Because what you just said is mentality and thought process. What Alex said is it's a philosophy of how you view this profession, which is everything that I've spoken to my community about for 3 decades now.
Tanya, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I've been very blessed because I came from the writing world first, and authors, they flock around each other and uplift each other and help them. So when I transitioned into acting, I ran into the people you guys are referencing, but I cut them out very quickly because I know that there are others out there. So now my network of people is amazing. We are often, suggesting the same auditions to each other because, hey, we're the same type. We should both go for it.
I agree with that to an extent on a personal level. I also think that there is that verges, not you, I want to be very clear, I'm not saying you, but the idea of leading out any sort of competition is naive beyond recognition. But I want a quick anecdote. I remember I was at UCLA with my mom, who was doing a talk in person, an analog Zoom. She's published 42 novels and 2 bestsellers, right? She's done really well for herself and does tremendous work. And one of the things that's important for people to understand in that world, and it applies to the acting world, there's a difference between writing a book and selling a book. There is crossover, but selling a book means that sometimes someone who you may or may not respect says you need to cut out half the book, and they might be right, and you have to cut out half the book and then do it. And I remember this moment. We were at UCLA and she was on this panel, and she was on this panel, and sitting to the left of her was one of the self-righteous type writers, and there's actor versions of that too. But the self-righteous, she stood up and said, "These are all of my rejection letters." And it really stuck with my mom because she was like, "Why are you pitching?" We understood the point she was trying to make, which is that I'm still here, but you haven't. But this woman who held up her rejection letters, she had clear disdain for my mom because she wrote what she termed commercial, writing. And I was like, "Listen, lady, this commercial writing put her 2 sons through college, it helped put a new roof on the house, and it's got millions of fans across the world. You and your rejection letters make $0, and you have nothing but disdain for your fellow writers on this panel." And I think we should be happy for the people who find success as actors, as managers, as agents. Every one of us on this panel has gotten dicked over probably 5 times this week already. We just get used to dealing with it, and we pass it through our systems. We have T-cell immunity to getting dicked over at this point, So this idea that we have to be like endlessly supportive is great, but be supportive of people who are in turn supportive of you and who are professional, but don't let it, don't throttle your success for fear that someone might be, potentially jealous.
Definitely not what I was saying, Alex.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not saying that's what you were saying. I'm just saying
it's a wonderful conversation in the sense that it is an incredibly competitive industry, and to your point, you have to function as such if you are going to win. In my opinion, you don't have to be negatively individually competitive and denigrating to others to do that, but you certainly cannot deny, and you certainly cannot pretend. And Lord knows I agree with you, Alex, per the writer analogy of the rejection letters. We do have a community who likes to spend a lot of time in the misery loves company reality. And I to Tanya's point, I probably was not as proficient at it as you have been early in your time transitioning from being a writer. It probably took me a little bit longer when I moved to Los Angeles to start recognizing the people and going, no, you are off my dartboard. You don't make it into my life. Bye-bye. Have a nice time. I'm not going to keep you because misery loves company. I don't have any time for that shit in this profession. It's too easy. There's too much of it. It's every single day, and it will unequivocally wear off on even the strongest person.
Okay, so we have a question, y'all. I mean, yay!
I thoroughly enjoyed the
I mean,
conversation.
this is like the best, right? I was like, oh, we don't have to ask any questions. I guess we should ask like one. So, as authors, like we're gonna come from an author point of view. How can we prepare for opportunities as they come, right? Because as you're like writing your little book in your dark corner, you're like, okay, great, and I'm gonna send it into the world, and then someone goes, would you like to come speak? And you go, wait, me? Why? How can we prepare to be ready for that kind of
author actor doesn't really matter. I mean, because both of our actors are authors here, so that works.
So yeah, so how can we prepare to be like?
So let's start with them, and then management. We'd love to hear from you.
T-squared, go first.
Yeah, I have a feeling that no matter what I say, I'm going to get schooled by Craig and Alex.
No.
That's okay. I'm here to learn. The thing that I have done to prepare myself, and this works for me, doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone, is to get myself as knowledgeable as possible about whatever it is that's going to come my way. And there have been times where I've been asked to give a talk on something that I didn't feel I was qualified on, but I knew enough about the fringes, and so I just studied in preparation for it. And then there's also putting yourself out there in smaller situations so that when you get a break like that, you're not standing up there freezing like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know what to do in this situation. So start out small and make sure that you practice this so that when you do get that, hey, do you want to come and join us for this thing? You can say, yes, I do, and not have a little panic attack about it.
Are there any special requirements to apply that also to acting, or is it like?
Well, to me, it's still going to be
fair for both.
Yeah, for Alex or Craig. I mean, to me, it's just confidence of proficiency. Again, being an athlete, this is the point of what Alex said about you don't get to play in the team because you stood outside the stadium for 10 years.
Right.
You actually have to show up and do some shit, and you actually have to fail and get better at that and work hard at it. And this is part of the problem of where the last 2 decades since the turn of the 21st century has happened with technology is it is much easier to live in the fantasy world that you're better at something that you've actually never done. And so, yes,
Truth.
granted, I'm not a young human. I've been on the planet breathing for a while, but I was a young athlete. And, I grew up in an era where we still got paddled in high school. And I grew up in an era that when you didn't make the team, they cut you in front of other people. Yeah. You didn't get to stay on the team because your parents bought you a glove. If you wanted to play, you actually had to get better. And I had a tough old school acting coach when I first moved to Los Angeles, who was from New York. And he was the nicest guy on the planet, but he didn't care. I mean, he Toby Maguire, Walt Goggins, and I studied with the same guy. It's like his whole thing was, you're going to have to walk in a room and be really, really good right from the start. Don't be blaming it on somebody else. Kevin, yeah, go ahead.
If you are putting yourself out there and practicing and doing these things, a lot of times that's how you get the opportunity. That's how you are offered.
Correct.
Okay, so for the management side, how can we be prepared to take our career to the next level? Because sometimes that people come to you and they're like, "Hey, you're ready," and you're like,
"Can I answer the previous question?"
Oh yeah, go for it. Answer whatever question you want. You can even answer the question you made up if you want.
So the question was, when people come to you and ask you to speak, what do you guys do? I have a very simple response when I'm asked to give interviews. I say no. I do. I just unless I know the people that are interviewing me, or I've had a relationship with them, like I do with you girls, and I usually just say no. I just don't, do interviews that often. I guess that's why, US Magazine called me an elusive agent in Hollywood, because I just don't do that. You girls know that. I don't really do those things. I don't go to the Emmy Awards, and I don't go to the Oscars. And, that article that was just done about me sitting in the corner at Miami Swim Week on the floor, I just don't do that. It's just not something that I'm interested in doing. I think my talent needs to stand in front of me, and me not stand in front of my talent. And so when I'm asked to speak, it's on a very rare occasion, unless my marketing department's hitting me with a cattle prod. I just don't. I think in the last 10 years, I've given 5 or less interviews, you know, and I don't count Winona and Jade as an interview because they're my friends, but
And because we don't do a good job at it, y'all. We
But
try anyway.
but I just don't. I think, you know, I see other people bragging about themselves, you know, and I rather brag about my talent. You know, I don't really brag about the agency. I mean, I put the talent in front of it. I think I should be the guy in the steam pipes in the basement doing the little knobs and stuff and making their air conditioning flow up to them of where the talent are. But no, I just don't grant too many interviews. I'm just not interested. A lot of times I get articles written about me and they send me it for a quote in advance. You know, hey, do you want to quote on this? And I'll quote on it. But as far as sitting down and doing an interview, I just don't. Matter of fact,
yes, we can do. We could just be
matter of
like,
fact, when I did your 25 hottest, your interviewer lady turned to me and said to me, I started talking about the agency and the talent. She goes, no, I don't want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about when you were in elementary school, because there's nothing in the press about how you grew up. You never talk about where you grew up and where you're from. So she goes, so she sat me down, the girl that interviewed me, and said, I want to talk to you.
We're talking about you, buddy.
Quick question.
Yeah, and
I'm
uncomfortable, so uncomfortable.
I think both of you guys know the same journalist,
right.
Jan.
Alex and Craig. Yeah, you got Jan.
Yeah. Jan interviewed me. Yeah, and I just thought it was, you know, weird talking about myself and my thing. But she says there's nothing written out there. She goes, I want to be that reporter that writes that stuff about you and where you're from, because I think that needs to be known.
Alex, do you want to take the question about like leveling up?
How can we be prepared to level up? Anyone? Well, not just us, y'all. We're talking about our audience.
We really are never going to level
We're
up.
talking about our audience, not us
level.
per se.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, leveling up, man. That's being prepared. I think being prepared for it, there's different versions of that prepared for it. There's the physical version, there's the logistical version, there's the financial version, like we talked about. A lot of times I think, you know, I usually recommend to people that if when they do level up, as you know, to use the term, they're going to have to start seeing, don't see yourself as a different person, but understand that your world will see you as a different person to some degree. You know, some interactions will change, but always remember that you are lucky to have whatever that level up may be. And it might be the level up from co-star to guest star. It might be the level up from guest star to series regular. It might be, you know, the day that you get approved for your first mortgage and buy a place. You know, you're no longer the renter person. You're no longer the actor who's sharing a house in the Hollywood Hills with 5-10 other people, you know. And, you know, as far as preparation for these things happens, it's like, look, the stay happy, stay healthy thing is I hit that all the time, because you only get that one life, unless you're a Buddhist, of course. And you have to utilize what you have, you know, as diligently and judiciously as possible. So when you have, like, you're presented with the opportunity of like, hey, I was going to go out and drink with my friends as an actor after acting class, or I was going to go see this play at the Geffen. Okay, well, there's one of the millions of choices you're going to be presented with. But I can tell you this, sometimes you go to a show you weren't really keen on going to, and not only did you end up enjoying the show, but you ended up meeting such and such manager or such and such studio head in the lobby at the intermission. And those people are going to say things like, what do you do? And they're going to be saying that kind of stuff to be polite. And then you're going to say, I'm an actor. And they're going to roll their eyes mentally without actually rolling their eyes. And then they're going to say, well, what are you working on? And you better have an answer. That's all I'm saying. You better have an answer, because if you don't, then you are one of the 10,000 people they've had that interaction with. But if you have an answer, and a good answer, then you suddenly separate yourself from people I'm not interested in knowing to people I'm interested in knowing. And then the follow-up question is, can I see some of your work? And the answer better be yes. I will email you a link, and it was nice chatting with you. And that's it. And these kinds of opportunities happen time and time again. But the reality is, and this is something people need to understand, especially actors, there are 3 reasons, and only 3 reasons, why someone would want to represent you or support you forever. And anyone who tells you differently is naive and or unsuccessful. 1, you make me money. 2, you make me look good by standing next to you. Or 3, you are simply so talented that I can't look away. If you're all 3, you got a client like a Chris Hemsworth or a Hugh Jackman or something like that. 2 out of 3, definitely a sign. 1 out of 3, definitely worth a meeting. But the reality is, if you don't have any of those things, I'm sure you're a nice person, but I can't help you and you can't help me, because let me tell you something, like hell, I'm going to put my kids through LA County's public schools, and private school is really expensive. So I'm going to need your help to get on a series so I can help put my kids through private school. I like you as a person, but if you can't help me do that, then there's no point for us to be working together. And if you can't demonstrate through your personhood, through your professionalism, that you're someone who, if you can't do it then, could do it down the line, then you're not prepared. You're just not. So being a kind, courteous, professional person never goes wrong. That should be your base level. And then always doing what it is you say that you're out here to do. If you're a writer, you're writing every day. To use my mom again as an example, she goes to Coffee Cartel in Redondo Beach and has been for the last 32 years, and she's churned out 32 novels at Coffee Cartel alone. She writes from 9 to 5 every single day, and when she's not writing, she's editing. And when she's not editing, she's doing her social media. As an actor, there is no excuse these days to not put something on tape every single day, to not be reading something every single day. Everything's got a screen on it these days. So for $200, you can set up an incredibly professional setup, and you should have a Vimeo page. If you have no credits, put something up every single day, not only for your own benefit, but for the benefit of that potential conversation that happens in the lobby at the Geffen or the grocery store, probably a Gelson's if it's someone who's useful to you career-wise. If you're not doing that, you are failing at your career. Not booking is not failing. Not trying is failing.
And the question, ladies, is what percentage, just like the rest of the planet, especially in sports, are willing to do, change to, evolve to quickly, and implement the premise and the philosophy and the reality of what Alex just said?
And what
And
he
it's-
said without saying it is treat it like a job.
Exactly, Tanya.
And the statistics of who makes money in SAG-AFTRA for the last 40 years bear out the percentage of people willing to make that kind of commitment, because it's 1% on a good day.
I
Period.
say talent all the time, Kevin. I say to them, this is a career. A career spans over decades, over years. You don't just come in, sign with me, and next thing I'm putting you in Green Lantern.
Oh.
It's just not, it just doesn't happen like that. And it's many talent that I've managed, interview, but then also some of the A-list talent I interview, the interesting egos centering around that are very interesting to me as well. Because I turned down somebody recently that was in a major movie with Keanu Reeves, and they wrote my assistant back saying, well, I guess he's missing out on this major movie. And I told them to write my assistant to write them back saying, I guess I'm not. I didn't want to represent them. I was not interested in representing them. It was not going to work with me and work with my mentality and how I like to work with creatives. And so you end up with talent like that as well, too, who get so full of themselves because they've had the wrong representation, who is just, kissed their butt and elevated them and had this sense of self-worth about themselves. And I won't do that.
My favorite line that I use in every meeting, and it's because it's succinct and it's true, is right now you need me more than I need you. And at some point, if I do my job correctly, that's going to change. I expect you to remember this conversation.
Well said.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
we
I'm
have
just-
exactly maybe 3 minutes
But
left.
first, I have to say,
Go for it.
wow, I learned a lot, y'all. Maybe I should be writing a poem right now. Just saying. I was like, oh, Alex,
Better get some bourbon out.
there.
So before we go, let's can we wrap up with one piece of advice that we know that all creatives were going to need in 2022 as they go forward?
And where people can find out more about you if you want them to find out more about you.
Well, I'm easy. I'm kevineos.com. That's easy to find me, and the Kevin E on YouTube for all the stuff I do regarding business or show business. But the bottom line is, to what Alex just said, and it's my religion. If you want to see things change for you in 2022, I recommend you change your behavior, whatever that means to you in your life and your goals. You have to, life is not about words, it's about your behavior. So whatever it is you're doing, whatever your game plan is, whatever you put into your life every single day, every single week, then if you want your 2022 to change, you don't have to change necessarily what your career is. You have to change your behavior.
To piggyback on that, I would say that we have been sold a bill of goods that your victimhood is your currency over the last several years. Victimhood is not currency. It is not useful to you. It is not useful to constantly be weaker and less self-sufficient every day. So reject the idea that your victimhood is your currency and start being successful. And if the people around you have a problem with that, then I would suggest that you reject them and find better people. Involve yourself with a higher class of people, put it that way.
On your Craig.
Are you okay?
Well, he said something that sparked a thought in me, and it's the victimhood thing. Instead of focusing on what you can't do or what people tell you can't do, focus on what you are able to accomplish and what steps you need to take to get to where you want to be. Stop thinking about the can't and think about the can.
Okay, where can people find you, Tanya? Because
My
yes.
website is mstanyatodd.com. I'm on social media at Ms. Tanya Todd.
And she has an IMDb page.
Page
People
also-
will click.
And also she's a podcaster. Just in case you want to say that, Tanya.
The
White.
52 Love Podcast.
There we are. Okay, great. Craig.
All I can say is just sum up and say, if you're patient, you'll persevere. You know, patience over perseverance, you'll persevere if you're patient. And, you know, barring, you know, dovetailing on what everyone else said, is that, you know, get the negativity and the uncreativity out of your life. You know, you've got to, you know, push forward. And you'll persevere in this business if you do it right and treat it like a career. And if people need to find me or find us, it's we're on Instagram, CK Talent. We're also at cktalent.com. It's our website.
And you can find me yelling on the corner of Hollywood and La Brea between the hours of 9 and 5.
Are you the reason they had to close the brewery down, Alex? Was that your fault?
I'm one of the reasons.
Okay. Are you yelling in front of the bakery? Because that's a really good place to yell in front of. That's
It
awesome.
smells great. Yes. All
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's well worth it.
right, guys.
You're hilarious. And thank you all for coming on the
I
show
still
today.
can't believe you guys.
I know
showed up.
everyone showed up and like literally I learned a lot. I'm gonna be watching this a lot. I learn a lot from my shows, y'all. But you can find out everything the ladies are doing on www.andithoughtLadies.com. While you're there, take a moment, go to the middle of the page, you see the charities that we probably support. Maybe you can support them also. We thank you in advance for that. Just remember, y'all, wisdom is all around you.
You're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Will Nona.
And Jade, bye-bye. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.